about MoneyTree and what exactly you do.
Well, essentially what MoneyTree does is we train kids ages from 6 all the way to youths ages about 26 on one, financial literacy, personal financial management, investment, as well as how to start businesses.
Right.
That's what we... What MoneyTree does is the entire class, we call it class, but if you have a look at it, it doesn't look much like a class because we run a mini economy inside.
Right.
We use stuff like this. We use our own currency.
Right. Because it says MoneyTree on the bottom.
It's our own
you look
currency,
on these notes.
Right? And what we essentially do is, when we train these kids, we use this money as incentive. If they answer questions correctly, we pay them in money.
Okay.
If they do assignments, we pay them in money. The reason we do this is because we're trying to help kids understand that there's value in what you do. So unlike a school system where you're given grades and given marks, there is no tangible motivation for a child.
Right.
So a lot of people have asked, so what, this is play money, right? But what kids get to do in MoneyTree is at the end of every month, we have an auction.
Okay.
We could auction off MP4s, cameras or whatever, and they bid with this.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Teaching kids financial concepts, inculcating good money habits in them through cartoons.
If you try to teach kids and talk them in a lesson and say, this is why you should save, it's really tough. But if they watch a cartoon, entertaining enough, and they can see the characters in the cartoon behaving as if they would, then now they say, hey, actually, I would have done that. I would have done that. Okay, so I can see why I shouldn't have done that. And then we carry out the lesson through workbooks, through different activities that we have built around it. Now the lesson becomes more comprehensive.
MoneyTree, which provides financial literacy programs, says kids can start learning about money and finances as soon as they can read and count. For most kids, that will be when they are around 6 or 7 years old.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Malin again from Hearts&Minds Development Center. So thank you for joining us on another Friday afternoon. And I'm sure if you have joined us, you are interested to know how you can help your children grow money on trees. Well, that was my original topic. But then when I met this guy, Michael Reyes, whom I've been trying to get for a while, I realized that that's really not what he's saying, but he's saying something so much more. So just before, I bring him up, I think it's great, with great pleasure, we have someone among our midst who is very passionate, and the mission is to, look at how we can have better balance on wealth distribution. And we are all aware that, our bankruptcy rate among the younger generation is increasing. And that's alarming because that's probably feedback to a lot of us who are raising children. So if you're here for the kids, you are at the right place. And because it is the right place, we're going to bring the right person very, very quickly. So let's bring Michael Reyes up. Good afternoon, Luis. Good to see you. Hi, Michael.
Hi. Good afternoon, Mala. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for saying yes. I need to thank your good friend, I believe, Gerald, who has been singing praises of you. In fact, he was upset, that you still haven't got Michael. I don't know whether he's coming in today, but Mike, you started this as a child, is it? So tell us a little bit about your background, because when I read about you, it says that beyond being MoneyTree being the largest financial literacy training provider, right? Beyond that, you've always been inspired to start your business as a child.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think it's as a child. So I've always, if you, in my background, I've always thought when we were much younger, like teens, if you wanted to go out and party, it wasn't very easy trying to get funds from your parents all the time, right? So it's better if you could earn some money so that you don't have to ask them, and they won't know where you are spend money at. Right? That was the initial idea. Uh, but my background has always been in marketing and advertising for the at least first 12 years of my working career. Before I had decided that, probably what I've learned and acquired through advertising and marketing, which is persuasion, persuading people to do things or buy things that they don't want to buy or they don't need, right?
Mm.
I figured if we could persuade kids and teenagers to learn about stuff that they wouldn't ordinarily pick up on their own, right? This could make a difference. And by this, I mean, I've had the opportunity to sit in classrooms and look at kids, and most of them, by and large, and this is in any given country throughout Asia. I think it's the same. I've had the opportunity to sit in American classrooms as well. Right? It's slightly different, but I think for many kids, it's just going through the routine of having to finish these hours in school, and then I go home, and my real life begins. And I think that's a whole lot of time that's wasted because a typical kid would spend about 5 hours in school. So if you multiply that by 5 days in a week, that's 25 hours a week that they're just giving up just going through something mundane and routine to them, which they may not feel, is useful. So I figured if we could teach them stuff about things that they would face in the future, maybe that would make a difference. And that's really how, the idea of MoneyTree came about.
So you've given me something that's interesting, right? You said that you come from the marketing background.
Right.
So in marketing, what you're doing is you're persuading people not to be so logical, because you're appealing to their emotions for us to buy when we don't need to buy.
There are going to be a lot of marketing people listening in now who's probably going to put some nasty comments if I fully agreed with you. Well, it's not trying to persuade you to do something illogical. It's actually persuading you to do something which I want you to do, which would need to seem logical to you. That's really the trick of it, right? Yeah, it's the trick of it. I mean, not everybody needs a 4,000, 5,000 ringgit handphone. You probably get that handphone and you probably use like 15 to 20% of the full power of the handphone, right? But the interesting part is what made you make that decision to pick up the phone, and that's really the persuasion in there, right? Yeah.
So, in what made me pick up stuff that I don't quite need? Isn't that an emotional choice, Michael?
It's always emotional.
Thank
we
you.
want to believe it. We want to believe it's logical. It's always emotional, right? It's always emotional. You buy more clothes than you could ever need. You buy handphones that you would probably use just a fraction of that power. You buy laptops that are way ahead of what you can use them for. You buy cars not to get from one destination to another, but to show people that you have arrived. I mean, it's just different things that you do, and it's all emotional, right? Advertising and marketing has convinced people somehow that it is logical, but it's emotional. Yeah.
Thank you for acknowledging that, because one Google away will take us to that answer. But I think hearing it from you is much more enticing, right? Now, having said that, what are you trying to do with MoneyTree? I mean, like, on one hand, you come from the background of persuading people about, increasing the level of importance of their needs to buy something. You come from that space. So why do you now, want, especially children, to learn how to perhaps think well, so that they make the right choices? So it seems to be opposing, or yeah. So tell me a little bit about where those opposing thoughts come from.
I'll start with the concept first, right? I think
Sure.
education should be something that kids want to play up from their curiosity. I mean, kids are naturally curious. I mean, human beings are curious naturally, right? I think what we did in the school system, and I'm not talking about just in any specific country, I think throughout the world, except maybe for Finland, what we did with education was we actually drowned the kids in something we call systemized thinking. And there's a story that I tell every time I speak, in public. It's about this child who came back crying from kindergarten. This girl, and she was, I think, about 6 years old. And what happened was she told the mom that the teacher had reprimanded her because she had painted. They were supposed to paint this ocean seaside view, and she had painted the waters red and the trees, the branch of the trees orange, and the leaves purple. And you see, it starts from that, because you don't get a Picasso coming out from a system like this. You won't. It's only people who dare to rebel against the system or break the norms who actually make a difference, right? And it's because the education system primarily was designed to produce workers. That's what they did. If you read history, and that has actually hampered the creativity in kids. So to me, education should be, we should take the curiosity that naturally happens in kids, that naturally exists in kids, and we should encourage them and engage them to want to learn more. So when we designed MoneyTree, that was at the forefront of our thinking, right? We had to get kids to want to learn this. It shouldn't be something that, you sat in the classroom and you looked at the teacher and say, oh no, not another 40 minutes of, whatever, right? It should be that the kids want to go in, they want to learn. So I think that's going to be a whole lot of persuasion and a whole lot of what I said earlier, which is affecting the emotion of the child, right? So what we did was we had this incentives right up front, right? So we actually had in our classroom, we wanted to break all the rules. The first rule we wanted to break, and this didn't sit well with educators for us. We eradicated the concept of right and wrong. You see, when as in for answers, right? For answers, because somebody's going to get moralistic with me and say, okay, hey. You see, when you tell a child the answer is wrong, if I asked a question in class and I told the child who answered this is wrong, if I said this is wrong, then the child automatically feels bad about it. Maybe sometimes the other kids laugh at him or her, and then you don't have that child wanting to try again, which is what we see typically in I think Malaysian classrooms, right? Why is it that kids, they're not volunteering to answer? They prefer to not maintain eye contact with the teacher, so that the teacher won't call me, right? Or if you're a kid in my school and you're bigger than me, I'm going to sit behind you. Because all I have to do is just drop a little bit and I disappear, right? And they do that because there's no incentive to try. So we broke the rules. We removed this right or wrong answer concept, and we had a complete or incomplete answer. And that made all the difference. Which means if you gave me an answer, if I asked you what's inflation and you say it's a box of chocolates, I say it's an incomplete answer. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means you're not completely there, right? That was the first thing we did. And the second thing we did was we decided to reward kids as long as you participated. So if I asked you a question, what's inflation, and you just answered, it's a basket of fruits, we would pay you money, $3 at that time, for every answer you gave. The better your answer was, the more we paid you. Now, eventually what you would use this money for at the end of every month or every term was you would bid in an auction using the money you have, right? So we used to put up anything from movie tickets all the way to PlayStations and sometimes iPhones. So if you were a kid in my class, you're going to answer every question. That's how it works, right? So we increased engagement, and because of that, I think what we managed to do was get kids to look forward to the sessions in itself.
Nice. So what's really interesting is that you've taken the psychology behind the persuasion, and you're using the same psychology to bring about curiosity in children so that now they can be curious to make their own choices, and hopefully the right choices. So instead of becoming what everyone is doing, that means making choices that is unconscious that can backfire for you, you're now creating awareness and helping them through the training and development process. You are helping them to make the choice in a more conscious way, is what I'm hearing. Did I get you right?
Yes. And a little bit more than that. Just a little bit more than that. So now that you've got kids not being afraid to answer questions or to participate, right? That just means that I can actually broaden the scope of what I can educate them with, right? So in MoneyTree, we have this philosophy where I don't try to teach you something, because that means I'm pushing forward something. Instead, I encourage you to learn something, right? So the difference is the willingness of the student. So the more willing the student is, the more they're going to learn. So we don't push that down. We pull that, we draw them in. So that's the persuasion part. I think the other important aspect of this is it's all about mindset what mindset you go in with and what habits you have. So
Nice.
the entire process is mindset shaping and habit forming, right? So that's what we really do with kids. Yeah.
And by working on the mindset and the habits, what you're doing is you are actually getting them to be automated in their future choices because you've already created the track of thinking well about it, right?
That's right.
Okay, nice. uh CY, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, wants to know how many students have you impacted.
At the last count, I would say more than 220,000 kids throughout our 10 plus years. That's mainly because one of the things that actually made this thing go a lot bigger was our collaboration with Maybank Foundation, right? So with Maybank Foundation, we have managed to cover a whole lot more schools. I mean, Maybank has been very generous about this. So Maybank has gone out. We have a program called Cashflow Kids with Maybank, and year on year, that can mean anything. I'm pulling down the numbers because for 2020 and 2021, we had this thing called COVID that affected our ability to go out to schools. But I would say in a typical year, we would do about 60 to 70,000 kids. So if you multiply that, and Maybank has been working with us for close to 10 years now. So you just do that math, it's quite a sizable number.
Nice, nice, very nice. Okay, so this is interesting because you are saying, we're creating habits, we're creating mindsets, right? Which is fantastic. So what for those, listeners who are coming in and who are watching this, I'm sure we all are here for our children. What does a healthy relationship with money look like, feel like, from your experience?
I think the one thing we cannot deny, and we should never try to pretend, is that almost everything has to do with money, right? While that's important, we also have to teach kids that money isn't everything. It just so happens to be that a lot of things have to do with money, right? And I think the second thing we need to help kids understand and work their way through is simply this: that money is a problem that's going to plague every aspect, every part of your life, your entire journey of life. It's going to be there. So the faster you solve that problem, the better you are at handling that problem. It's just going to make your journey throughout life a lot smoother. So the ways that we think parents will start with kids is as simple as this, because kids see what we do, and that's something we don't always pay attention to. So if you, for example, took your 5-year-old child to a toy store and bought a toy for the child, I want to take you through what the child sees, because this is the interesting part, right? So the 5-year-old child sees that you put the toy on the counter, the cashier has rang that up in the POS, and then what you do next is you take out this plastic card, you touch a particular terminal, the child, the toy, and the parent leaves the store. Now, from a 5-year-old's perspective, I want 10 of those cards. Don't have to pay for anything. See, that's what they see. They don't see you paying for the credit card bill. They don't see that. They only saw the part where you touched the card on the terminal and we walked out with the toy. And you might think, yeah, but when they grow up, they're going to learn this. So I take you back to the first day you ever got your first credit card, when you opened that envelope or that package or whatever, and you saw that card, right? Somehow or rather, at least 95% of people you ask are going to tell you that felt very liberating. That felt wonderful. That felt like, a moment in your life that you're going to remember forever, right? And when you ask yourself why, because for a lot of people, and the data is terrible, because at 5 years ago, 13%, 13% of youths aged between 22 to 29 in Singapore had debts, this is Singapore, had credit card debts beyond what they could pay with their 3-month salary. So think about it, right? On the day they got that card, that was such a happy moment. Little did they know what that could take them to, right? So why is this so? Because of your perception of what the card can do for you. And where did that perception come from? Advertisements, parents, people you watch. So everything we do, our kids pick up, on this. And I think what's important is their interpretation of that. So if you always ate at expensive restaurants, right? Don't blame your child if your child asks you the next time to eat at another expensive restaurant. They can't tell the difference. If at every birthday they always got what they wanted, every time they asked for it, they got it, why would you blame a child for asking? It's only natural. If I ask, I get. I'm gonna ask even more, right? So I think when we're looking at talking to kids about the value of money, irrespective of your financial standing in life. And I want to share this story very quickly. We had a kid in our class from an international school that told one of my trainers, I'm not very interested in what you're going to teach me. This is a cute story, right? Not so funny after a while. And the child said, the trainer asked him why, and he said, because my parents said I already have 6 million ringgit in my bank account. Now we're talking about a 13-year-old boy, right? So here's the point. I mean, if we told kids this kind of stuff and we thought that would give them a sense of security, it's going to give them a whole lot more, right? Sense of entitlement is going to come in. Lack of motivation is going to come in because I've got, to a kid, 6 million is like, the biggest thing in the world, right? The guy probably feels like Bill Gates, right? So you got to be really careful what you say to your kids, what you show to your kids, because it starts from, what you do at home, and the kids pick that up. Then, of course, as they grow older, we can talk about this later, the 5 friends that they embrace as good friends really dictate, after a while, the mindset and ultimately what car they'll drive, what house they'll own when they get married and stuff like this, right? But it all starts from home, right at home.
Mm. So you've given us a lot of, information. Amin Abdullah says, very interesting topic. I have a question coming up. But before that, right, I'm trying to keep track with all things that you've actually said. So you are telling us a lot of interesting things and probably the kind of unconscious behavior that we are engaging, every day, and we don't realize, we don't understand why our kids are not like us, or are not, how come our DNA, if we were more financially literate, we are wondering how come that DNA didn't get through to our kids. And what you are explaining is what you are helping us to understand, to see it from the mind's eye of our children, how they are seeing, perceiving, and probably concluding unconsciously. And which is why the programs that you run actually creates the awareness, brings those beliefs that has subtly been embedded in their system, to question it, to ask it, so that they understand better. Now, but in today's world, right, Mike, money is getting more and more intangible, right?
Right.
There's a book that I write which I absolutely love. It's called Change Anything. And one of those things that they looked at with people who have accumulated debts over and over again is the use of credit card. And the reason being, when we use hard cash, we remember because we're touching it, feeling it, and we feel the pain of giving away something. Whereas when we use credit card, how many credit card holders actually even remember how much they would have spent up to date at this moment, right? So
Right.
if you're a credit card user, would you remember? Whereas if you're using cash, I withdrew this much and, I only see a few notes now. And so we become more aware and conscious about it. Now, but we are going into this world where everything or anything to do with finances and money is becoming more and more intangible, right? What do you think to become aware of, so that, we pull back, because to say that, let's go back to hard cash, I mean, that would be nice. But what's your advice on that for for us?
I think it's this attitude of the thing you want to inculcate in kids is this attitude of accountability. I mean, the problem is technology will always change. Will always affect our lives. So today it's going to be e-wallets, right? And kids will not hold money as much in future as they would today. So the problem is, it's really very easy to spend, because all I have to do is I'm seeing numbers, I'm just moving numbers, and that's all I'm doing, right? So the thing is, if you look at it, I think if you train a kid to keep a true account of everything that's going on, right, in their lives, the money they get through pocket money, how much they spend, how much they want to save. I think if you did that and it becomes a habit, then it just becomes natural. I will give another story, right? So I had this guy who worked for us many years ago, and he wasn't very highly paid at that time. But I was very shocked when one day he came up to me and he asked me this question. He said, okay, how many fixed deposit accounts can I open? I'm saying, I don't think there's a limit. Well, why do you ask? Now, this guy had amassed in his time working with me, and he wasn't earning very much. I want to emphasize this. He had probably got more money than at least 90% of the other guys in the office. And he wasn't the highest wage earner. And I don't mean he had more by 10% or 20%. I mean, this guy had a lot more. Now, he had this very crazy idea about money. And he said to himself, the moment I get my salary, I decide what goes automatically into savings. And then with the rest, then I budget. And that one simple habit that he had helped him amass, a lot of money. See, most people don't do that, right? Most people, when they get their money, they see what they have to spend first. And then if there's any balance at all, then we save it. So in MoneyTree, we actually coach that. And I think that's important, because the way to see if you actually raise your child right. And this is a test that, when I speak, to parents in conferences or whatever, I always ask this question. Everybody trusts that they raise their kids right. I mean, most people do. So the real question is, would you give your kid, and when I talk about kid, I'm talking about those under the age of 15, would you give your kid 10,000 ringgit without any conditions? Just say, kid, son, daughter, here's 10,000 ringgit for you, and leave it be. Now, most parents will say, you got to be kidding. That kid's going to blow everything tomorrow. That kid's going to buy everything. Now, see, that's where we know there's a gap in what we were trying to inculcate in them, trying to teach them about money. If you could leave 10,000 bucks with them and just not mind it, because you trust that the child's going to say, okay, I better put, like 9,500 in my account first, and 500, I'll do whatever I want, and then we'll think about it later. If you had that, then you know your child's on the right track. But if you say, I can't do that, then the question is, why not, right? So it doesn't matter what they're paying with. They could pay with credit card, they could pay with through e-wallets, apps. Doesn't matter what it is, right? I think it's the mindset, the attitude. If they don't have that right, I mean, it doesn't matter. They can hold hard cash and see it go, and that's it. But incidentally, what you brought up is interesting, which is why casinos give you chips, right? Casinos give you chips so that you can't tell the value of the money when you're betting and losing it, right? So yes, that works as well.
The pain is lesser, so chances of you focusing on the pleasure is higher, right? So I think these
Right.
are some things that we need to understand so that we are more cautious. I'm going to read to you a couple of comments before I ask you some more questions. There's been quite a number of good questions from the audience. Gerald says all schools, universities, and institutions should implement these topics. Our education system needs an overhaul for sure. Okay, I am not going to pause here because then we'll be depressed. Let's look at more hopeful stuff and maybe look at another question, because that's why we have MoneyTree, Gerald, because we're not doing it in school and in families. Leong Jikin says, if a parent has to focus on one thing, what would that thing be?
Okay, so I'm going to assume that Leong here is asking about, particularly about training kids on financial literacy, right? I think the one thing you probably want to look at and really have to focus is if a child appreciates how money is earned, as in what it takes to earn that money and what value it has, I think that's going to go a long way. And by this, I mean when we take a child to an ATM machine and you put your card in and then you key in your numbers and then money comes out. You see, to a child, I want that card because I just stick it into a wall and money comes out. They cannot connect the fact that money was earned and what happens at work. So typically when people don't appreciate how money has arrived at your doorstep, then it's very, very easy to feel entitled or to feel that, if I want something, I should get it, irrespective of anything else. So I think to answer the question directly, it's walking your kids through the fact that, everything that they have, they own, they enjoy is a result of somebody else's work, right? Somebody else's effort, whatever that effort may be. And that these things don't just drop from the sky all the time, right? And then to appreciate that what they have isn't exactly what everybody else in the world has, and that difference comes from whether it is background, whether it is culture, whatever that may be, so that they get a good feel of the fact that there is a value in the things that I get, there is a value in the money that I hold. And I think that's probably the most important thing you want to focus on.
Nice. What I'm hearing you say is basically our children's mindset is very much determined by the way they are experiencing life. And in this case, specifically money, right? Because we might have a different intention as parents. We always have a positive intention for kids. Because one of those things that I hear is that I had a hard life, right? So I want to make it easy for our children. But sometimes I think these are some thoughts and actions that we take that may take away the experience for our children to be curious and to learn and to be able to make the right choices, because they then understand the right mindset required, and also forming the right relationship in this case, knowing how things work in life, literally speaking, right? Where the money comes from, how hard, who's working, whose money is this, and that impacts, how I feel about myself, and the choices I make in the future is what I'm actually hearing. So there was a lot of, I will say, not golden nuggets, but diamond nuggets, Mike. Thank you so much for that. Well, at least I got you smiling with the diamond nuggets. Oh, so serious. Okay, Alvin Shin. Sorry?
Go ahead. You've been too kind, but go ahead. Yes.
Okay. No, otherwise, your good friend will disassociate and not introduce more great speakers, more Malaysian heroes. So your good friend who introduced you is going to introduce more heroes to me. So, I must be really kind to the heroes who don't accept that they are heroes.
No, what he did was he introduced me to you first, and then he'll bring in the heroes. But okay. So
okay, he did say your next name is humility, but so we tried Googling Michael Reyes and it said humility because we couldn't find much on the net. Alvin Chin says, can children learn? This is an interesting question. No. Can children learn about money if their parents are bankers or accountants? I think, yeah. What's your take?
Well, there's a yes and no to this, right? I think it depends on what conversations you have at home. So if you have just plain work conversations, then the kids switch off. So no matter how experienced you are, they won't learn anything, right? I think just as with the concept of education, it's not about what or how much we can teach. It's how much the student can receive and understand. So the one key thing that we try to do in MoneyTree and maintain in MoneyTree is to simplify every lesson, and I think that's key. the most difficult concepts for finance to a lot of people, like options, like futures, like forex, and things like this. We teach that to 15-year-old kids, right? So when people ask how do you do this, it's just simplifying it. It's just we build it around very simple stories, and we tell those stories to the kids, and then they understand the concept and they're not afraid. And many years ago, we had entered two of our teenage teams, and by teenage I mean 14 and 15-year-olds, into a university business challenge, right? And how we did that was the university came to me and said they wanted sponsorship. I said I'll only agree to sponsor if you allow my teams in there. And they were saying, that's not right, because these are young kids, they thought they were gonna bully those kids and beat them to a pulp. But what happened was interesting, because none of our guys were judges. They had their own judges and all that, right? And what eventually happened was one of our teams got placed second. Now this is a big thing, because when 14 and 15-year-old kids present ideas and they have to stand up to the scrutiny of judges, to explain why they came up with the idea, the viability of the idea and stuff like this. It's not something every child can do. You have to be confident, you have to know your stuff, and you have to be able to explain it through, right? And I think what we managed to do was just simplify stuff for kids. So to answer Alvin's question, your parent can be anything. It doesn't matter. Your parent can be the best in his or her field in accountancy or finance or in banking, and you may not be able to grasp everything simply because they can't simplify it for you. So the trick is not how much we want to throw at a kid, but what we can simplify to a level they can pick it up, right? And that's just it. So can they learn from their parents? Yes. Do their parents need to be accountants or from a financial field? No. It would be an advantage if the parents could actually simplify it, but it really comes down to, can we simplify things for kids?
Nice, thanks. Because I think Alvin didn't finish his question. He said, learn better instead of going through your platform. I think you did answer that question already.
Okay.
What you're basically saying is that, what I'm hearing as a parent is that if I understand how money works for me, and I can communicate that to my children in the way they can get it, then they would get the right messages. But because I may not know it, so I live my life in a particular way, either I may not know it or I may not be able to articulate it to my children, then what then happens is, if I don't know, then monkey see, monkey do sort of a thing. I see my parents doing that, I think it's okay to do that, right? And if I'm not able to articulate and have these conversations, then my children miss out to learn how life operates. And in this case, a lot of the life, issues operates and is connected to money. As what you said, money is not everything, but money does, manage a lot of things in life at this moment.
A lot of things, yeah.
Yeah. So and that's what you're saying. So those are, I think, a lot of very important points. Not just in, I think you're giving us a lot more parenting tips than just money tips. But money.
No. Actually, well, it's like this, right? Everything works if you have got a great relationship with the other person. So what I think where we fill in the gap as in MoneyTree is this: when a child looks at the parent, and there are many roles that the parent actually plays in the child's mind, right? One is your gatekeeper, your disciplinarian, you are funder, you are, a lot of stuff, right? And when parents want to talk to kids about money, parents tend to come from an angle where I want to control you. So I'm going to tell you what you cannot do, right? Now, take it from the child's standpoint. I mean, that's not going to be really fun, right? I mean, everything I'm going to hear from you is going to just be what I cannot do, okay? So I think where MoneyTree comes in is, we don't tell kids, as I told you, we don't try to teach kids. We try to allow them to learn stuff, right? And so by doing this, by having a learn through play approach, where kids know that they can earn as much as they want, they just have to be actively participating, right? And then if I earn all that MoneyTree dollars, MoneyTree points, I can go and bid for stuff that I want. That's exciting to me, right? That means that there are no limitations to what I can get, what I can achieve, and nobody to cap my spending or my ability to convert this MoneyTree dollars into gifts. Secretly, why we're doing this as well is we want to track a child's behavior. If you really want to know how your child would behave, say 10, 15 years from today, when they land with a lot of money, it's very easy. Just give them a lot of money now and watch what they do, because there are already habits that they've developed, and it's just going to continue with it, which is the same as what I said earlier. Would you give your kid, and by kid I mean under 15 years old, 10,000 ringgit just like this, no rules, just give it to them and say, okay, this is yours, do what you want. You won't, because you figured that I don't trust this kid with the money, right? But that's as good as saying I don't trust the way I raised the kid from a financial standpoint, right? So what we try to do is we try to really, from day one, inculcate these habits, inculcate this mindset. We don't make it that we're trying to teach you. You're going to experience it on the fly. And so kids learn a lot faster in the program simply because apparently to them there are fewer restrictions, there are fewer rules and things like this, right? So they get to be themselves. And then while they're not looking, we are putting stuff into their heads, right? Yeah. So that's what we do.
You've just hacked, you've hacked basically what makes people learn, isn't it? Because whether we're children or adults, we don't like to be told. We want to be curious. We want to be engaged, right? For us to stay open to make our own choices, the freedom to make choice. And I think the major difference is that you are engaging them in a way that they are making sense, probably in a way it should be. You're giving them the right information, helping them to connect the dots and understand what's happening, so that they then can make the choices. I think the big thing I'm taking back, and I still think it's a parenting tip, because it's not just in financial literacy. It's the same in another taboo subject, which is sex education, where we think we need to sit down and talk to them about debits and credits and do's and don'ts. Learning does not happen in that space, is what you're telling me. So it's like, I think as parents, we need to now think firstly of our intention. Why am I doing this? Is it to control the outcome, or help them grow, right? Help them think for themselves, help them become empowered with the choices that they make. So the intention, and once our intention is pretty clear, then how are we going to deliver this intention as a way for children to be engaged in day-to-day living, helping them to understand how life operates, basically in a more realistic way, right? It's what you seem to be doing. I'm just curious. I know you've done so much of work. You did say 220,000 kids in, I don't know, is it just in Malaysia?
No. So we actually have presence in 7 countries, but all in the ASEAN region. So your typical Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, and so forth.
So the number you gave us, is it for Asia?
Yeah, for ASEAN region, for the ASEAN region.
Okay, nice, thanks. So I'm curious, right? You're paying attention to children, which is fantastic, because that's the future. And probably parents are also doing it. But we also have a lot of adults who get into financial trouble. Why are you keeping us out of this, Mike? Why?
No.
Why are you not helping us? Because we didn't go to the program. So why?
Okay. So let's talk about the commercial reason first, right? As a parent, you'd be prepared to pay 3 times more and twice as fast for your kid than you would for yourself. That's just the rule. Okay. So if I wanted to sell you anything for yourself, you'd probably think a lot harder than if I said it's for your child. So I know if I want to get your money, it's a lot easier to get it from you if I put your child right in the middle of the conversation, right? That's really the commercial side. Yeah. But the other aspect of it is the psychological side. We've developed habits and certain mindsets, throughout our journey in life, and we are not always very receptive to the fact that we have to change along the way, or we have to keep evolving. So a lot of people don't, right? it could be your perception over how a relationship should be, all the way to who should pay the bills at home and things like this, right? You're quite fixed. So as an adult, if we wanted to try to change your habit and mindset, and up against someone who is already resisting the process, it's going to be very hard. And then I get a very reluctant person who says, I don't need this, I know this. What you're telling me, I know. And please don't tell me that I don't do it because you don't know my life, right? And it's just too much effort. It's just too much effort. You tell a kid, you ask the kid a question, the kid gives you just answers straight off, right? No facade, no ego, nothing. The kid just tells you, no, I don't know, right? And that's how we figured, okay, kids would be it. And this is another interesting part. We get more parents who send us younger kids than they do with teenage kids. And I think it's just their belief. You see, because many parents may struggle with their teenagers at home, they probably feel that sending them to a program like ours isn't going to help the kid. The kid's too fixed in the mindset, too obstinate, too rebellious, too whatever. But in truth, we had a lot of success with teenage kids simply because they ask the questions that they can't ask at home, right? And they know they can ask openly. Why can't I buy this? Why can't I spend my money this way? Why can't, right? And when we tell them, yeah, you could do this, but I want you to picture this, right? So if the cost of living is going up this way and your salary is going up this way, there's going to come a point that gap is really very big. If you're spending exactly as you're doing now, do you see what's going to happen when you're 60? And that gets, the message home. They say, okay, so what can I do about this, right? Versus if they had a conversation at home, is just don't buy this. Just don't buy it. I'm telling you, don't buy it. That's it, right? So that's one of the things. The other thing that we are now approaching, and we are going into what I would call MoneyTree 3.0, so to speak, is we're starting to develop content that we call future rating your kids. And the idea is quite simple. Today's child is faced with more stress than what we would have gone through in our time, right? Technology is changing rapidly. Some people say it changes every 3 months. There's a big change. But curriculum in schools, in universities, don't change for 2 to 3 years. They just don't. They just can't keep pace with this. So imagine if your child in school right now, you have to learn and master what they're teaching you, even though what they're teaching you right now is going to be probably obsolete by the time you get out. And then you've got to keep pace with what's happening outside. It's a lot of stress. And so as kids go through these things, it's becoming quite apparent. Data is going to show you, just a simple Google search is going to show you something really shocking, right? In the world today, 1 in 7 young people aged between 15 to 29, 1 in 7, have mental health issues. And a close 30 to 40% of these kids either have attempted suicide, hurt themselves, or done something very serious. Now, my take on this, and you could say, Michael, that's not in your area of focus, but it is, because a young adult cannot focus on managing their funds if they can't manage themselves. It just isn't possible, right? If you took adults, since you brought up the topic of adults, if today someone got divorced today, right? I can tell you what most guys would do and what most ladies would do. So most ladies would say, okay, the immediate therapy is I'm going to spend money, right? They go shopping, and that's immediate injection of feel-good factor inside, right? The guys would do anything from having a wild night out with the boys, irrespective of what that means. That's conversation for another day. To doing something really reckless. And both of these scenarios involve reckless spending of money. It just is. So you cannot manage money if you haven't got a grip on yourself. So we're looking at this from the standpoint of, can we introduce accelerated learning in our programs to help kids learn things a lot faster with less time? So that's a program that will be coming up soon. We have developed this together with Professor from Yale. Then we're looking at the psychological aspects, how to get kids to manage themselves, how to get parents to detect these things in kids before it becomes very serious. I mean, 1 in 7 kids aged between 15 to 29, I think anyone listening in here, if you have a child, it should worry you. And if you don't believe this problem is serious, I challenge you to do this, right? If you have a kid age 12 and above, all you got to do is talk to them about mental health, mental disorders, going to see psychiatrists and all that. I'm going to shock you, because in their generation, they're going to say, yeah, I've got a friend who's going through this. It's normal stuff, it's things that, yeah, it happens. So that's a trend that I find very scary. And I think we want to deal with that. I know we can only talk about it from the financial standpoint. So what we are making a claim is this: if they can't fix themselves emotionally and mentally, they're not going to be great financial managers, right? So we're making our bid to try and help kids in that area as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Well, we will invite you again when that is ready. But you're totally right, because we've had a couple of speakers from the space of mental health and as well as financial literacy. I mean, we had a speaker from AKPK itself, and she very clearly stated to us that, a lot of, not a lot, if not all our spending decision choices, even food choices, are based on emotions. And that's why when our mental health we are struggling with our mental health, it's going to impact, if not most, all the choices that we make, and the consequences that comes with that. Now Gerald says, and by educating kids, this one he's promoting you lah. And by educating kids, MoneyTree is developing generations of financially smarter adults. Which brings
we'll send in a lot of hampers and vouchers. Go ahead.
Okay. A lot of hampers. Okay, now I'm going to try and give you, say something positive about you. So let's see whether I get the hampers too. Now, we started off just now by saying, we talk about how we can create greater balance on wealth distribution, right? And just help us connect back to what Gerald has said, and probably your own conclusion about how learning about money for young people, right, can actually create a better balance on wealth distribution in our part of the
world. Okay, to answer the question, I'll give you an example of something we're all quite familiar with. Okay, so we never learned about buying stocks when we were in school as kids, even in university. We never learned about that. In fact, for most people from our generation, we learned about it when we first got out into the working environment, and people told us, go buy this stock, go buy that stock. And if you ask why, the reasons can be as stupid as, because my mother said so, to my friend said so, to somebody said it's going to go up, right? And without knowing what this company even does, I'm not even talking about looking at the financial statements. Without even knowing what the company does, you're going to buy that stock on the words of somebody that you don't even know, right? And that's your first attempt at investing for most people. Now think about it. Most of these guys lost money. Yeah, if they made money, they made it momentarily, and then they lost further down the road. And that's just the same as what we're trying to do. So when we talk about wealth distribution, if you don't know about something, you're not able to handle it wisely, nor are you able to see what your options are outside. What we're trying to do is give kids a wider field, a wider knowledge of what are the options out there. And because the conversations at home, I think, for a lot of people is, you want to pick a career for your child. You want to pick a career for your child that you know about. And it doesn't matter what the situation is or what your child's passions may be. So I think that's got a lot of people, a lot of kids just going through, okay, I'm just going to do this because my parents said so. And they don't have passion in it. So they go get a job which they don't have passion in. It's just a 9 to 5 for them. And then they don't even know about what decisions they make which would involve money. And we say this as a scenario in MoneyTree. It's very expensive to fall in love. Very expensive, right? I mean, yeah, you're a teenage person. It's very expensive to fall in love. Your friends want to go here. Your girlfriend or boyfriend wants to go here. Okay, if you're a girl, at least you can use this traditional excuse that guys should pay, right? And
It's
if you're a guy,
excuse, Mike, it's not traditional, it's valid.
okay, by virtue that I'm a guy and you're a girl, I'm just going to agree. So with that problem in place, right? It's really very expensive just falling in love. Then you talk about the next step, which is getting married. And in many cases, if I always speak to, when I get a whole crowd of ethnic Chinese people, I say, look, it's very expensive for you to fall in love, and it's very expensive for you to stay in love, because the wedding itself today, the wedding dinner itself today, I mean, you could have put a down payment for a very nice house.
Exactly.
And that's what happens, right? So people don't do that kind of calculations when they go through life.
Yeah.
And I had my dad laugh at me. This is the first time I actually saying it publicly. So before when I was about to get married, I had a spreadsheet. Right? This is very sick to be telling you on this broadcast. So what I had was, I had a spreadsheet. I had names of people I was going to invite, and I did a calculation of how much alcohol they could consume and how much ang pao red packet they would give. And that actually, I had to calculate and say, okay, maybe this person, I'll just not, invite his whole family, because they come with husband, wife, and 2 kids or whatever it is, right? And then you do the math and you say, this doesn't work out, right? Back then, today it's even worse. So when my dad saw it, my dad said, what are you doing? I said, Dad, it's business. It's just business, right? And many people who laughed at this, I then had 2 partners who, when they got married, decided to ask me, how do you do this, right? Because you don't want to come out from your wedding dinner into debt, right? You just came out what's supposed to be a happy occasion for you and jump into debt. And it might take you months, if not years, to settle that. That's crazy, right? So what we're trying to do is give kids a foothold. Every decision you make probably has got financial attachments to this, short term or long term, and you want to know before you decide, what these things may entail, and that's just it. So, will it help in wealth distribution? I believe so, because the more they know, the path they take would be far more educated and more calculated, and I think less mistakes could be made that way.
Nice.
And that's just what we hope for. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. I think you've really helped us understand the next generation struggle with the language of money. Even though money was the main issue, but I really do think that you've got us to think about our mindset, our ability to learn and how we apply these things in our day-to-day choices and live our life. Definitely great tips, not just for parents, but for young adults. So really, really want to thank you for spending your time with us and sharing your diamond nuggets with us. Is there anything else
Thank
you like?
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. I'm going to call you again, and you're going to say yes. This time, not because it's your friend, but because now we are friends. I hope. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience before we say goodbye?
No, I was just scanning through the questions, and I think primarily is this. The one thing that every parent wants for their child is, they say, I want my child to be successful, right? And in most cases, when they say successful, they mean not having any financial struggles later on. That's what most parents want anyway, right? And I think the irony is this, because everything you're pushing your child to pursue, whether it be engineering, computer science, accounting, whatever it is, whatever you're pushing the child to go through, does not educate the child on the biggest matter that they will have to deal with throughout their life, which is money. That's just it, right? So I think, if you get a chance, you really want to look at financial literacy in a very, very serious way. It's going to affect, your child without a doubt at any one point of their lives, right? And so I would say, whatever you push your child through, I think the main thing is how they're going to cope with this inevitable challenges that's going to come their way. Yeah, that's just it, really, on a Friday afternoon.
No, it's good news for us because we've got a lot to think over the weekend, and we've just put up MoneyTree.asia. So click, find out, sign yourself up, sign your children up. You definitely know that, somewhere around the numbers that you're making, 3 of the kids would be coming would be mine, Mike. So thank you very much, and
Thanks for having us.
thank you for being the hero who doesn't acknowledge that he's a hero. So with
No,
that,
no hero, really, really no hero.
So remember, he's not a hero, So thank you, Mike. And, we really hope to have you again on any one of our shows or podcasts.
Thanks,
so thank
Mala.
you.
Thanks so much.
Yes, thanks a lot. So as we say goodbye to Mike, we've just put up something about debt trap. So when I'm looking at it, 40% of our young adults are, having credit card debts that they cannot pay. And according to Bank Negara, it is 47%. So that's a lot of numbers to easily back up what Mike has said and why it's really important. MoneyTree or not, I think what's important is that we now know one of the most important aspects that we need to empower our children and the kind of literacy we need to help them with. So as you think about it, as as parents, as we think about how best we want to actually prepare our children for the future, I hope this episode has been useful. With that, remember to subscribe our YouTube as well as our Spotify. Till we meet again next week with another very interesting speaker, I believe. And with that, stay safe, stay well. Signing off, this is Malu from Hearts&Minds Development Center. Bye.